This video is sponsored by Timbro. Although nowadays most of what I do is on YouTube, for 10 solid years I made my full-time income from playing music, from playing gigs at weddings, at bars and restaurants and hotels, all sorts of different gigs, all culminating into a full-time income. So today I want to share with you 27 tips I picked up along the way, from things you should do to also things you shouldn't do. We'll talk about the time that I used my hand as a capo for a guitarist who forgot a capo. We'll talk about the time that I forgot my transpose button was on, so the whole band thought they were out of tune by a semitone, but it actually turned out it was me. And we'll also just talk about some subtle little things that can make your life as a working musician smoother and more successful. So my first tip is about how to actually get gigs, and it is be direct. I had a regular residency gig at a hotel for years, and the way I got that gig is I literally sent someone a random Facebook message. I knew the piano player who played there already. I didn't know him personally, but I knew of him. So I just sent him a random message on Facebook one day and said, hey, I play solo piano too. I have experience playing at hotels and restaurants and that sort of thing. If you ever need cover, let me know. And it just turned out that he was regularly looking for cover. And then eventually down the line, he stepped back and I became the full-time piano player there. So that all led back to this one interaction, this one random cold call on Facebook. So my second tip is give out your phone number, not your email address. So I'm sure you've heard before about the importance of networking as a musician. You want to get to know people because after all, it's who you know, not what you know. But the importance of giving the phone number instead of the email address is key, because so often I have needed a bass player or a drummer or a guitarist at a moment's notice because someone's ill or someone can't make it to the gig. I need a musician right now and then. So I need to call someone. I don't want to just email them. So make sure any valuable contacts that you meet have your phone number, not just your email address. Tip number 3 is learn to drive. Even if you're not going to buy a car, even if you can't afford a car, knowing how to drive, having a driving license can be so valuable as a musician and can be the difference between you getting the gig and not getting the gig. For years when I started my wedding band, the drummer would drive us to all the gigs, but he didn't actually have a car. We would just rent a van per gig. But because we factored the cost of that van into the price of the gig, it still made economic sense to do so. And without that van, we just physically couldn't have done the gig. We couldn't have moved the equipment. So knowing how to drive could get you the gig rather than somebody else. Another thing that can get you the gig over somebody else, make you more competitive, is if you are a multi-instrumentalist. Say that you're a piano player, but you can play a little bit of bass or a little bit of guitar, or you can do some backing vocals. That could be enough to get you the gig over somebody else, because if somebody is putting on a show and for a couple of songs they need an extra guitar rather than a keyboard, if you can play keyboard and guitar, you are the obvious pick. Tip number 5 is make high quality videos of you playing and have them available online. When I got a random gig at Abbey Road, the songwriter who was hiring me saw my performance of It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing, which I had just happened to have put up on YouTube. And I didn't know that he'd seen that, but apparently that was what tipped him over the edge into choosing me as his piano player. Number 6 is check your junk folder, the spam folder on your emails. Although the majority of the time the stuff in there is going to be genuine junk and spam, occasionally genuine opportunities can slip through into the junk folder, and there have been various times in the past where I have been lucky enough to catch an email that was in the junk folder that actually turned out to be a great opportunity. So just every now and then check the junk folder. Number 7, keep a good calendar. There's nothing worse than a disorganized musician, and you do not want to have the dreaded double booking. So keep a well-organized calendar, ideally on something like Google Calendars, because then you can synchronize it with other people. When I was in my band, we all had a big synchronized calendar where we could see everyone's availability, which made it really easy to know who was available for gigs and when we could do rehearsals, that sort of thing. So yeah, keep a good calendar. Tip number 8 is know how to play Happy Birthday. So many stories I've heard of musicians, including myself, being asked to play Happy Birthday at a gig and then in that moment realizing I don't actually know how. We all know how to sing it out of tune at somebody's birthday, but so often at a gig, whatever type of gig that is, if it's somebody's birthday, you might be asked to play Happy Birthday and at very short notice, so know how to play it. Also, if you're playing a gig at Christmas time, know some Christmas repertoire. It's really easy to go into a gig just with your regular old repertoire that you play for the other 11 months of the year, but at December, at Christmas, you have to have at least some Christmas repertoire to keep audiences happy. So have something in your back pocket. If you play a gig on New Year's Eve as well, then have Auld Lang Syne available. You know, the song that everybody sings at the turn of midnight. It's the sort of thing that people booking a band for New Year's Eve may just assume you know how to play. But if it comes to 1 minute before midnight and you still don't know how to play Auld Lang Syne, you might be in trouble. Now, if you're getting into the world of playing function music or pub music or wedding music, any of that stuff, there's some songs that come up time and time again, so it can just be valuable to know how to play them. I imagine they vary from place to place, but here are some obvious ones that I think you should definitely learn. Likewise, if you are looking at doing solo piano gigs, playing piano at weddings, at restaurants, at hotels, there are some classic songs, some classic standards that people will probably come up and request you play. And it can be really valuable if you know how to play them, because then you'll probably get a nice tip from them and you can avoid the embarrassment of not knowing how to play a really sort of obvious song like Piano Man by Billy Joel. Here are some songs that in my experience as a piano player are common requests. Tip number 12 is an old musician's adage. It is that amateurs practice until they get it right, professionals practice until they can't get it wrong. If there's a piece of music that you're performing at an event, at a gig, whatever it is, you want to be able to perform it effectively with your eyes closed. You want to basically not be able to get it wrong. So that's the level of performance you should be aiming for in your practice. Don't just practice until you think you can blag it. You want to be able to do it under any circumstances and give yourself the best chances of giving a great performance. Tip number 13, if you're driving to a gig in an unfamiliar part of the country or somewhere you've never been before, perhaps download the maps onto your phone. On apps like Google Maps, you can download maps so they're available offline. You might have been alright getting there because you had internet when you began, but then when you go to leave at 1 a.m. and you just want to get home, it's not very convenient to then not have the internet and therefore not be able to load up a map to find out where the hell you're meant to be going. Tip 14 is get your equipment pat tested. Although many venues don't care about pat testing, many venues do care about it. So if you are playing a gig at a venue that does require pat testing on your electronic equipment, you don't want to be caught short. So have that done. It's a bit of a pain in the ass, but it's worth doing. A similar thing to pat testing is PLI insurance, public liability insurance, which is quite commonly asked for when you're playing at events or functions, weddings, that sort of thing. It's just an insurance to make sure that if members of the public get hurt on your equipment or interacting with you, that you are not liable for any sort of lawsuit. Tip 16 is remember people's names, whether it's venue staff, whether it's fellow musicians, the sound man. If you can remember people's names, then you will not only come over as more likable, but it will just make it far easier to work alongside people. Number 17 is don't wear your stage clothes to the gig. So it can be very tempting sometimes to wear the outfit that you're going to wear on the stage to the gig just for convenience sake, but so often you'll turn up sweaty or you'll have to set up your gear and get really hot doing that. Maybe it's raining on the way there, maybe you spill your food down it. You don't want your stage clothes to feel uncomfortable, to feel sweaty, to be dirty. You want them to be clothes that you feel confident in. So wear something else to the gig, something presentable of course, but not the same thing that you're going to wear on stage. Tip 18 is bring some food, some water and some coffee to your gig. Although those three things are often available at gigs, sometimes they are not, and it is not very pleasant to be caught short, to be at a gig and have to perform without having any dinner, feeling tired, feeling dehydrated. Just have those things available in your car just in case. Number 19 is if you need something and you can manage to bring two of them, then bring two of them. So what I mean is, if you need a particular power supply for your instrument, then bring two of them. If you need a capo for one of the songs, bring two of them. Because inevitably, there will be a gig where that thing breaks or that thing gets lost. And for the sake of a £15 power supply or a £10 capo, you don't want to compromise a gig. And there was a gig actually once where the guitarist in the band forgot the capo, so I selflessly donated my hand as the capo. Number 20 is bring an aux cable. So there have been a couple gigs I've done where, for whatever reason, things have just gone really wrong and we cannot perform. Whether it's a member of the band not being able to perform, maybe it's a piece of equipment breaking. If you can't perform, it's really awkward if now there is no music. So the least you can do is bring an aux cable, have some music downloaded on your phone at all times, and then if everything goes wrong, just put that music on with the aux cable, and that will keep most people happy. Number 21 is get the event photographer's details. So often at events or weddings or whatever it is, there will be official photographers taking photos, and it can be really valuable to get their card, get their business card, and email them, because they will probably quite happily share with you some photos that they got of you during the gig, and those could be really valuable promo material for getting future gigs. Number 22 is don't rely on the transpose button. So this is largely applying to keyboard players. You know, that button on the keyboard that means that even though you're still playing in C, the keyboard sounds like it's in a different key, like C sharp. The problem with transpose pedals, it's not just that you never really learn how to play in other keys. That is a problem in itself, but more that eventually you will probably forget to turn off the transpose, and then the song after the song you were playing with transpose, you will accidentally play in the wrong key. My worst horror story with the transpose button is we were playing a set, and one of the songs I used the transpose button for, that was fine, but then the next song I forgot to turn the transpose button off, and it was on just like +1 semitone, so I was playing in C, let's say, but it sounded like it's in C sharp. Now the problem was I didn't notice this immediately, because the song that we were playing at this moment just began with piano and vocals. So I was playing 1 semitone higher than I knew I was, didn't hear it. The vocalist also didn't notice it, so she just started singing along. Nothing seemed wrong until the guitar and bass came in at about the 1 minute mark, and suddenly they are both dramatically out of tune. They are a semitone out of tune with what me and the vocalist are doing. So they both start thinking, oh God, we're both out of tune, start tuning up. Then they realise, wait, no, we weren't out of tune. What the hell is going on? So the whole song just starts falling apart because I forgot to turn the transpose button off. So yeah, don't forget. If you're going to use the transpose button, use it responsibly. Tip 23 is very similar to this. It's know how to use your gear. So when you have an instrument or a pedal board or something like that, an amplifier, you should know how to use it, because in the situation of a gig, you don't want to be faffing around working out how it works. So for example, another sort of horror story I have with this is I was playing bass at a gig, and for one of the songs we needed to down tune. So I needed to down tune every string of my bass by a tone. So the E string will go down to D, the A string will go down to G, etc. So I had a Boss tuner, a white Boss tuner, which is over there, one of these tuners. Now these tuners, on the little display, they show you what note you're tuning to. And I was trying to tune to D. The thing is, on these displays, they also show sharps with a very small dot at the bottom of the display. And I didn't notice that dot. I didn't even know that dot was there. So the display said D, it said I was in tune, so I thought I had tuned to D. But I'd actually tuned to D sharp, because it was D with the dot, didn't know the dot was there. So I start playing, and then the guitarist starts playing, and he's suddenly realised he's in the different tuning to me. So he assumes that he's out of tune. So just like the previous story, he starts retuning, then I'm adamantly saying, no, I've just tuned, I can see I'm fine. Of course, I'm not fine, I'm an entire semitone out because I didn't know that dot thing was there. So yeah, know how to use your equipment. Tip 24 is take earplugs to every gig. To be honest, nowadays I take earplugs to gigs even when I'm attending them, but when you're on stage, it's even more important. I do now have permanent tinnitus in my ears, particularly in one of my ears. It's not too much of a problem. Most days I don't even notice it, but it's the sort of thing that I can imagine would be a lot worse if I hadn't worn earplugs for at least most of my gigging career. Now, generally what I would do is I would wear one earplug, because I didn't really like the sort of detached sound you get when you have two earplugs in. But what I would do is I would have that earplug facing the drummer, because of course smashing a cymbal next to your head is going to do your ears some damage. So even if you wear earplugs just for some songs, just for sometimes during the set, I think that can really help you with your long-term hearing. Tip number 25 is keep your receipts. So if you are a self-employed musician, that means that you can file expenses, so you then effectively save yourself on the tax bill. You only get taxed on your profit, right? So if you file expenses like the fuel you used to get to the gig, the food you ate at the gig, the guitar strings you bought to do the gig, those come off of the money you earned, and now your profit is a smaller number and therefore you pay less tax. So doing that across your career is going to save you thousands of pounds of tax. So keep your receipts. You may have heard this before from other working musicians, but one of the most important things to being a working musician, to getting hired, is to just being a friendly person who's nice to hang out with, because a lot of working in the music industry is not actually playing music, it's hanging around or moving equipment or driving across the country, just spending extended periods of time with the same people. So you want those people to be easy to hang out with, nice people. So really, the way I see it, there is obviously a level of musicianship you have to be at to get gigs, but once you've got to that point, getting past that level won't get you more gigs. What will get you more gigs is being friendly and reliable and just a nice person to hang out with. And tip 27, my final tip, is to remember to have fun. So often the stress of a gig, or perhaps the monotony of playing the same set, the same repertoire night after night, can make you forget that the reason you got into music is not to make money, but to make music, to have fun, to enjoy yourself. So even if you're playing Mr. Brightside to a wedding for the 100th time that year, remember you will look back on this one day and smile, and just make sure that in those moments you don't get swept up in the stress of it. You just really enjoy the fact that you get to make music for a living. Today's sponsor is completely free to use. It's not just a free trial, it's actually just free to use and get massive value out of. It's Timbro. Timbro is a fantastic interactive way to learn how to play the piano or the guitar. Timbro presents the music in a really easy to understand way and listens to you as you're playing to give you instant feedback on whether you've played it correctly. And it's not just for beginners. Many of the pieces on Timbro are really quite challenging. Timbro also has many exercises and lessons on music theory to make you a more well-rounded musician. Timbro is also great for guitar as well, not just teaching you songs, but teaching you theory that's useful on the guitar. For example, knowing which notes you're actually playing on each fret of the neck. So like I said, Timbro is completely free to download and use, so if you're interested, do consider downloading it using the link down below in the description. Thanks very much.